I'll give a little teaching story about the importance of this that came to me. I heard this years and years and years ago. And it was the idea that if someone gave you a diamond, and maybe it was even set in such a way that you could wear it around your, on a chain around your neck. But if they didn't tell you the value of the diamond, at some point in time, you might even get tired of it, not understanding its value. And so the teaching story, this is one that came from India, was that you might sell the diamond for the price of a spinach. Just not understanding. And so refreshing ourselves with the knowledge all the time refreshes us in understanding the value of what it is that we're doing as we journey in our awakened life, or the path of awakening. And so understanding embodiment is an important concept to keep current with, and to see how it keeps unfolding, that understanding keeps unfolding for you. When we change our name to Trillium, we use the word Trillium because, just as the name implies, the TRI, which stands for 3 in so many different languages, that Trillium, it is a wild flower. It does bloom in different parts of the United States and Canada. I'm not so sure if they have trillium flowers yet in Europe. But it's a 3-petaled flower that comes out in the spring. And that idea that there's 3 primary aspects to Trillium Awakening. There's consciousness, embodiment, and relatedness, or mutuality. And each of those 3 key elements is very, very actually nuanced, has many different facets to it. And I can't really share about all those facets in a short presentation. So I'm just going to share a little bit of a slice. But one of the things that probably all of you remember about this work as compared to some other spiritual traditions is that some traditions tend to either negate or marginalize the human body. That it is to be, we should do without, the body should, we should make sacrifices and things like that in order to be able to be more awake and not be attending to the body that much. There are even some spiritual traditions that do have the perspective that our body is a temple, and it is. But often even those schools, those mystery schools or metaphysical schools, are still in that, even in that expression, the body is a temple, tend to relate again a little air on the side of the divinity of who we are, and not just the plain old humanness of who we are. Samuel would use the expression sort of warts and all. Everything is included in our concept of embodiment, and not just included, honored. So with this particular attitude towards embodiment, we actually don't try to push away things like pain or sickness or tiredness. It might be giving us a message that something has to happen, but we don't split away from it. We lean into it in order to receive the message. I'm going to refer back to something Karavani said. I loved, Karavani, you were saying you, through some different synchronicities, you came to understand that maybe that word, or a martyr syndrome, is something that you want to be leaning into, and not so much to try to figure it out with your mind, but just to hold it. Hold that idea. It seems to match you. And I'd like to suggest, in terms of this concept of embodiment, that the matching that we generally feel with something is often not an intellectual match. It's like, oh, yeah, that feels right to me. Whether or not we say those words, but it is often more of a feeling sense. And that sort of feeling sense is part of what we call embodiment. So when we talk about the body and feeling senses, we're not just talking about, oh, I have a full stomach because I just ate a lot. That is a physical sensation, and it's part of embodiment. But embodiment also includes kind of hunches or yeses that we get, or no's that we get. Again, even Julie, you spoke about a conversation that you were having and kind of going like, there was a little bit like maybe we're even bold to say something based on a feeling sense that we're having. That's part of this embodiment, that in this Trillium work, we start to pay attention to things that the mind might otherwise overlook. On the other hand, I love that Sandhya was saying, like, I'm really honoring my mind right now. So it's a really holistic honoring. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is pushed away. We don't want to... what happens is when we start excluding, start splitting off, start pushing away, we actually use a lot of energy to do that. Or even the energy of trying to escape from our problems. All of those things are pretending we've risen above something if we haven't. That consumes energy. And the energy that gets consumed, it could be better used in this process of self-discovery. So those kind of splits that happen when we decide that the body is not, and by body, again, that it's much more than just this physical temple. We would also include the emotions as part of the body. We would include energetics inside the body as well. So we want to expand what we mean by the word body if you haven't already done so. So some things like the emotional body is not so easy to touch. There's the physical body. It's very concrete. We can touch it. We can feel like it's hurt or cold or things like that. But that more intuitive body, like David, I'll refer back to you. When you read that book, oh, I am an empath. And it was a big yes that you got. But being empath is actually a very embodied situation. I think to some degree everyone is empathic, but some people are very, like, you get like 10 out of 10 on it, some kind of score. It means that your body is taking in information all the time. And it can be difficult to sort out often, like, is this mine to feel, or am I feeling this as a result of somebody else I'm in the vicinity of? So those are subtle bodies, we would call, in this embodiment process. So I also just wanted to share a poem with you, just to remind us, this is one I'm sure that many of you have heard before, that this is kind of orientation of just this radical self-acceptance, especially of the body and all of the information that it gives to us. So this poem, over 800 years ago, by Rumi, talks about it. He doesn't necessarily use the word body. He just uses, or this translation says, being human. Being human is having a body. Being human is having a body. So this poem of his, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the beyond. That sort of radical acceptance, 800 years ago, that radical acceptance of the present moment, greeting what comes to this human body, greeting it with welcome, understanding that it might be here for some good reason, not pushing it out. So this is the exact same orientation that we have towards embodiment in this Trillium path, that radical embrace. I wanted to spend a few moments actually reading to you some of the outline from our orientation course. And this is the part of that outline that has to do with embodiment. There's a sort of sub or tagline to that section on embodiment, which is dropping into the feeling heart of being. Dropping into the feeling heart of being. the first point in this outline is coming into full direct contact with all levels of your being, including your personal and cultural history, your environment and your emotion in your body, emotions, mind, intuitions, which we could call subtle senses, and spirit. All of those things are included, what we mean by the word embodiment. So I'm going to read that one again. It's so important to have that expanded view of what we mean by embodiment. Coming into full direct contact with all levels of your being, including your personal and cultural history, your environment, and your body, emotions, mind, intuitions, subtle senses, and spirit. So I'm going to put this into some perspective just briefly when we talk about waking or consciousness, embodiment, and mutuality. That field of consciousness is the field of non-change. As you can see from this few words I just read, the field of embodiment is the field of change. It includes vastly more than just our physical body. It actually includes the mind. That's part of the field of change. It includes the emotions. That's part of the field of change. It includes our cultural history. That's part of the field of change. So all of that is included in embodiment. And then that third petal of the trillium flower is mutuality. And that's, or relatedness, that's the relatedness, not just you and me, person to person, but how we relate to all of this field of change. But that's for another topic. So let's move back to embodiment. It's allowing yourself to be deeply impacted by life's ups and downs, not attempting to protect yourself unduly from this impact, nor to deny your potential reactivity from it. And again, when you all were checking in, I really saw that you are each allowing yourself to be impacted by life's ups and downs and not trying to protect yourself from it. We may have to ride those waves, but it's different to ride them as opposed to avoid them. Another part of embodiment that we feel is important in this particular path of awakening is fully experiencing the sensual delights as well as the painful limits, so the whole range. Some schools of awakening would prefer that we don't become sensually delighted. They feel like that will be a lower state of awareness, but we feel let's accept everything, including sensual delights. Another aspect is of becoming more enlivened and freely self-expressed. Again, if you start noticing you're more self-expressed, that means you're becoming more embodied. We'll also find we become more integrated and less dissociated over time. Again, dissociation is when we're trying to split off part of who we are. So we become more, as we more radically accept the field of change, we will become less dissociated. We will also welcome emotions and intuitions as an essential aspect of your nature. We might find that we have more spontaneous actions that are unconditioned. You know, maybe before we are on this path of awakening, we had many, many conditioned responses. And now we begin to, those conditioned responses begin to come to our awareness, and we might even begin to hold them in a different point of view and look for, which will then naturally arise to more spontaneous responses. Another part of this embodiment that's important is investigation of broken zones or meta patterns in life. Again, those are like meta patterns are like sort of super conditioned responses. And once we begin investigating those broken zones inside of us and start kind of untangling or unwrapping old, really meta patterns, meta conditioning, when we do that, we will start freeing up more energy and attention, and that can be used towards your further awakening. Another thing about embodiment that we say to people is that often people's conscious awareness, or maybe their conscious identity, might begin to shift from perhaps often where it might have been more associated, your sense of self might have been more associated with something to do with more the head, or what you believed yourself to be. A beliefs often we associate with the head, and begin to shift more into the area of their heart, or maybe even more fully down into lower parts of their body. So again, that embodiment, we often use the word down. There's a sense of descent from just a more dissociated head space into a more embodied feeling space. So again, those are just, a lot of different points that I've shared with you today, and I invite you to just check inside how they seem to resonate with you. Each one of these points that I've just suggested to you we might use the analogy of pierced in order to understand it more deeply, penetrated and engaged with more fully. But today we just were highlighting them. But I invite you to take in some of these words. If some of them feel significant to you in this moment, take them in and penetrate them on your own. Now, of course, I could go on with more kind of didactic understanding about embodiment, but I thought what I'd rather do is just lead you on a simple exercise that can bring our awareness more into our bodies and into this present moment. And I would suggest that most of you probably don't really need this, because based on your check-ins, I could see how present you are and present to currents that are life that are felt inside. Even little things like when you say things, people might say something like, I was feeling a little anxious before the call. That feeling of anxiousness, that's actually an embodied feeling. We actually sense it. And if we ever wanted to sort of tease it apart, we might say, yeah, I feel a little jittery on a sort of more subtle, energetic level. Or maybe I feel scattered. We would use those words. So even something like I feel anxious is an embodied feeling. And those were things that, an example of something that was reported by somebody. So you have a huge amount of embodiment. But let's now do a little bit of a systematic attunement to the body. I'm sure that most of you have done this before, and our bodies thank us each time we do it. So we'll do it again. And you may want to close your eyes so that you eliminate the distraction of the visual field. Just see what works for you, or maybe have your eyes just downcast. But take a moment, first of all, just to connect with your own breath. And connect with your breath in the way that works for you. There's no need to change the breath in any way, just notice it. Perhaps you notice the rise and fall of your chest. Or maybe you notice some air moving in and out of your nostrils. Just noticing the breath in the moment. And now we're going to switch our attention just a little bit more. We're going to put our attention to the space that's outside of us, even with your eyes closed. Just have a sense for that space you're outside of you. Now, one way you might notice it is, what is the temperature of the room you're sitting in? That's the space outside of you. And you can notice, is it hot or cold for you? You might also notice, even with your eyes closed, if the room you're in is dark or light. That light is outside of you. You can notice it. You can be aware of sounds that are outside of you. Now I'm going to ask you to bring your awareness to the edges of your body and the extremities of your body. So notice, for instance, what your hands are touching right now. Notice what your feet are resting on right now. And notice the contact your body's making with what you're sitting on. Just notice, is that what you're sitting on? Where is it supporting you? Is it supporting your hips, your buttocks? Are you leaning back so that your back is supported perhaps by a cushion or the chair? Just notice that support. See if you can rest into the sense of being held by something as simple as a chair or a sofa. And now take a moment to scan your body. Maybe just take a resting inside of your body and scanning. I like to just start at my feet, so you might as well go ahead and start at your feet. And just say, hello, toes. Bring it up to your ankles and your calves, the lower legs and knees, and just keep bringing your attention up the body. This is just an attunement to the body. If you find someplace in the body that there is like a contraction or a pain, say hello to it. Nothing to do about it, just say hello to it. On the other hand, if shifting your position would create greater comfort, go ahead and shift your position. As you continue to notice the trunk of your body, all the way up to the neck and the shoulders. I like to scan down both arms at the same time. All the way down to elbows and forearms and wrists and hands, just saying hello. And then you can bring your awareness back up the arms, both arms, to the neck again. And then include the head and face. Now we'll just take a moment to allow the attention to move inward in the inner parts of the body. Sometimes I like to follow a breath inward to the area of my throat and the area deeper down to the area of my chest, my heart. Still keeping the awareness turned inward to the stomach and the belly. Maybe all the way down to the root, the base of the spine. Just saying hello to those inner places. In a moment, we'll draw this exercise to a close, but before you do, while your attention is still resting inside, maybe you could take a moment just to ponder, what else do I want to share with the group when we have another round of sharing? Take a moment to see if something that you might not have thought about. And if what comes is just a continuation of what you started to share, that's fine. Or maybe you even came to the call knowing what you wanted to share, and that's fine. And maybe you're just enjoying a little bit of inner silence right now, and that's fine. And if something has come into your awareness that wants more attention later, you might see if it's okay to say to yourself, I'll come back. I'll come back and be with you later. And for now, you can bring your awareness from the inside of you back outside again. Back into the sense of the outer space. What's the space that you're sitting in right now? Let your awareness be with that. And maybe let your awareness be in appreciation of the collective space we're sitting in right now. That's outside of you. It includes each one of us, but it's bigger than each one of us. In that sense, it's outside. If your eyes have been closed, I invite you to start by opening them up downcast. Maybe even taking them a little bit slowly up, your gaze slowly up, and perhaps looking around your room a little bit before you engage with the other people visually. Thank you.